It's Friday, September 20th, 1935. The back room of an exclusive Harlem club is filled with 50 people, half invited by Lucky Luciano, half by Bumpy Johnson. Everyone knows why they're here. No business talks yet, no deals, just a game, a chess game. The stakes? Not money, not power. Respect. Lucky Luciano, 37, is the most powerful man in New York. He's reorganized the Italian-American mafia into a system that brings order to decades of chaos. He's rich, dangerous, feared, and he thinks he's unbeatable. On the streets and at a chessboard. Across from him sits Bumpy Johnson, 30, Stephanie St. Clair's chief enforcer and strategist. A man quietly building a reputation for intelligence, foresight, and cunning that rivals anyone in the city. Tonight, intelligence will be tested against experience. Strategy will be tested against power. The world outside might see black and white, Italian and Harlem, power and street smarts. But tonight, the chessboard doesn't lie. The game begins. 8:17 p.m. Luciano opens with the king's pawn. Bumpy responds with the Sicilian defense, a bold, aggressive counter that immediately disrupts the balance of the board and foreshadows what's about to happen. For the first few minutes, it looks like Luciano is winning. His pieces are active, his threats are real. Observers on his side smile, observers on Bumpy's side worry. But then, the moment that changes everything. At 4.5 minutes, Bumpy moves his queen, seemingly exposing it to capture. Luciano's grin widens. He reaches for his rook, confident he's about to win. And then Bumpy strikes. A knight moves. Check. Threat. Discovered attack. In one brilliant sequence, Bumpy sacrifices his queen to trap Luciano's rook, and the game turns on its head. Suddenly, Luciano's king is exposed. The room goes silent, then erupts in whispers. This wasn't luck. This wasn't a blunder. This was genius. Luciano laughs. Not forced laughter. Genuine respect. For the first time, he sees what Harlem has known all along. Bumpy Johnson is brilliant. 5 days later, Luciano requests a rematch. This time, only 20 witnesses. The game is slower, more cautious. Luciano has studied the Sicilian defense. He's determined. But Bumpy adapts, using patient strategy instead of tactical shock. Over 45 minutes, he slowly builds an advantage and wins again. Luciano acknowledges Bumpy's versatility. One game, tactical brilliance. The next, strategic patience. He realizes this man isn't just a good chess player. He's a strategic thinker capable of running criminal operations at the highest level. From this point on, the relationship evolves. Chess becomes a way to discuss operations, strategies, and problem-solving. Luciano treats Bumpy as an equal, seeking his advice and valuing his intelligence. Meanwhile, Dutch Schultz terrorizes Harlem, threatening operators and attracting law enforcement attention. Luciano knows Schultz must be eliminated, but before doing so, he turns to Bumpy for advice. Over dinner and chess, Bumpy explains that Harlem will remain peaceful if Schultz is removed. He and Stephanie St. Clair can manage operations without violence. Luciano, impressed by the foresight and honesty, agrees. Harlem will remain autonomous. October 23, 1935, Schultz is gone. Chaos doesn't follow. Harlem thrives. Respect for intelligence, not power, has secured independence, and it all traces back to 6 minutes at a chessboard. Imagine this. The most powerful mob boss in New York, a man who controlled an entire city through violence and strategy, sits down across a table from a 30-year-old enforcer from Harlem. No guns, no intimidation, just a chessboard, the stakes, respect, autonomy, the freedom of an entire community. On September 20th, 1935, Lucky Luciano, king of organized crime, discovered that intelligence didn't come with power. It came in the unlikeliest of packages. Bumpy Johnson? 6 minutes. That's all it took for a young black man from Harlem to defeat one of America's most feared mobsters and change the rules of organized crime in New York forever. This is the story of how chess, strategy, and respect reshaped Harlem's underworld. It's Friday, September 20th, 1935. The back room of an exclusive Harlem club is crowded with 50 people, 25 invited by Lucky Luciano, 25 by Bumpy Johnson. Everyone knows why they're here. No business talks, no deals, just a game, a chess game. And the stakes are higher than money, higher than power, respect, intelligence, and survival in the criminal world. Lucky Luciano, 37, is the most powerful man in New York. He's reorganized the Italian-American mafia into a system that brings order to decades of chaos. He's rich, dangerous, feared, and he believes he's unbeatable, on the streets and at a chessboard. Across from him sits Bumpy Johnson, 30, chief enforcer and strategist for Stephanie St. Clair, a man quietly building a reputation for intelligence, foresight, and cunning, skills that rival anyone in the city. Tonight, intelligence will be tested against experience, strategy against raw power. The world outside might see black and white, Italian and Harlem, but on the chessboard, there are no divisions, only moves and consequences. It's Friday, September 20th, 1935. The back room of an exclusive Harlem club is buzzing quietly. 50 people are inside, half invited by Lucky Luciano, half by Bumpy Johnson. Everyone knows why they're here. No business talks, no deals, just a game, a chess game. And the stakes are higher than money, higher than power, respect. That's what's on the line tonight. Lucky Luciano, 37, sits at one side of the table, the most powerful man in New York. He's the boss who reorganized the Italian-American mafia, brought order to decades of chaos, rich, dangerous, feared, and he believes himself unbeatable, on the streets and at a chessboard. Across from him sits Bumpy Johnson, 30, Stephanie St. Clair's chief enforcer and strategist, a man quietly building a reputation for intelligence, foresight, and cunning that rivals anyone in the city. A man who doesn't rely on guns or muscle, but on brains. Tonight, intelligence will face experience. Strategy will confront raw power. The world outside might see black and white, Italian and Harlem, power and street smarts. But tonight, none of that matters. On the chessboard, there are only moves, threats, sacrifices, and consequences. Every click of a piece echoes far beyond the table. What happens here will ripple through the streets of Harlem and the underworld of New York. The game begins at exactly 8:17 p.m. Lucky Luciano opens with the king's pawn, moving boldly to control the center. A classic opening, one he has used hundreds of times, one he believes guarantees early advantage. But Bumpy Johnson doesn't flinch. Calmly, deliberately, he responds with the Sicilian defense, a counter as aggressive as it is elegant, one that immediately disrupts the balance of the board, and quietly signals that he's not playing by anyone's expectations. For the first few minutes, it looks like Luciano has the upper hand. His pieces dominate the center. Threats multiply. Observers on his side nod confidently, a few even smile. On Bumpy's side, worry creeps in. Could the young Harlem strategist really withstand the boss's experience? But then, the moment comes, the pivot that will change everything. At 4.5 minutes, Bumpy advances his queen, and to anyone watching, it looks like a terrible mistake. The most powerful piece on the board, exposed, vulnerable. Luciano's grin widens immediately. He reaches for his rook. Certain victory is at hand. Confidence radiates from him. His side of the room relaxes. They believe the game is already won. But then, Bumpy strikes, with a single knight move. Check. Threat. A discovered attack from his bishop simultaneously targets Luciano's rook. In one breathtaking sequence, the queen sacrifice traps the rook, and the tides of the game turn completely. Luciano's king, once safely tucked behind his defenses, is suddenly exposed. Every spectator realizes what's happening. This wasn't luck. It wasn't a blunder. It was pure strategic brilliance. At 8:23 p.m., just 6 minutes after the first move, the game is over. Checkmate. The young Harlem strategist has dismantled the most powerful mobster in New York. The room is silent for a heartbeat, then erupts into whispers, gasps, and nervous laughter. Everyone knows they've just witnessed something extraordinary. And then, the line that would echo through history. Bumpy Johnson leans back slightly, calm, collected, and says simply, "I don't play to lose." Those 5 words cut through the tension. They carry strategy, philosophy, warning, and pride. Luciano laughs, not out of mockery, not out of anger. Genuine laughter, respect. For the first time, the kingpin sees clearly what Harlem has known all along. Bumpy Johnson is not just tough, he is brilliant. Visuals, Slow pan across the faces of the witnesses, half shocked, half impressed, lingering on Bumpy's calm satisfaction and Luciano's stunned expression. 6 minutes. That's all it took to shift the balance of power. Not with violence, not with intimidation, but with intelligence. And in that moment, the rules of respect in Harlem and in New York's criminal underworld changed forever. 5 days later, Luciano sends a message, a rematch. This time, only 20 witnesses, 10 on each side. The spectacle is smaller, but the tension is just as high. Luciano has spent every waking hour studying the Sicilian defense, determined to prove he can adapt, to redeem himself. But Bumpy Johnson, calm as ever, doesn't rely on shock tactics. He adapts, patient, precise, building small advantages, one move at a time. The game stretches on. 45 minutes of careful maneuvering, each piece placed deliberately, each move designed to limit Luciano's options. Observers lean forward, trying to predict the outcome, but Bumpy's strategy is subtle, invisible until it's too late. Luciano tries to find counterplay, to create complications, but every attempt is met with Bumpy's careful anticipation, every potential weakness closed, every trap planned long before the first piece moved. As the game draws on, the subtle pressure accumulates, position by position, move by move. Bumpy Johnson slowly squeezes Luciano's position until resignation becomes inevitable, not with a single brilliant tactical strike, as in the first game, but with methodical, patient mastery. Luciano nods in acknowledgement. He sees the difference. One game was tactical genius. The next, strategic patience. This man is versatile, formidable, and not just a chess player. Luciano realizes something deeper. Bumpy isn't only capable on a board, he thinks like someone who can run major operations, analyze complex situations, anticipate moves from multiple actors. He's a strategist, a mind that operates at the highest levels of organized crime. Intelligence and foresight, not violence alone. And now, Luciano respects him not just as an opponent, but as an equal. From this point on, their relationship evolves. Chess becomes more than competition. It becomes conversation, strategy sessions disguised as games. Luciano begins bringing problems from his operations, asking for Bumpy's perspective. How to handle a difficult operator, how to structure deals, how to predict responses to law enforcement pressure. And Bumpy answers, calm, precise, analytical, solutions not based on force, but on preparation, calculation, and foresight. Luciano treats Bumpy as an equal, not just on the chessboard, but in the way he values intelligence, seeks advice, and acknowledges capability. Mutual respect grows, trust is established, and what started as a challenge, a test, becomes the foundation of a partnership where two very different men from very different worlds find common ground through strategy, through intellect, through respect. These games, these meetings, signal something far greater than a win or loss. They show that intelligence matters, that respect can be earned, and that strategic thinking, combined with foresight and patience, can reshape relationships, communities, and even the balance of power in New York's criminal underworld. Meanwhile, Dutch Schultz reigns terror over Harlem. Guns, threats, and violence are his tools. Operators live in fear. Streets are tense. Law enforcement watches closely. The chaos threatens not only Harlem, but the delicate balance of New York's criminal underworld. And Luciano, ever the strategist, knows one thing for certain. Schultz must be removed. But before acting, he wants certainty. He turns to Bumpy Johnson. Dinner and chess become a conference. Luciano lays out the problem. Schultz's extreme violence threatens everyone. But what happens if Schultz disappears? Will Harlem descend into chaos? Will operators fight over control? Bumpy listens, calmly, then explains with precision. If Schultz is gone, Harlem will be peaceful within a week. Stephanie St. Clair has the respect of the community. I can enforce security without terror. Disputes will be handled through negotiation and not violence. We'll maintain operations professionally, and the residents will support us. Luciano studies him carefully. Every word is measured, every assessment realistic. There is no arrogance, no exaggeration, only foresight and honesty. And in that moment, Luciano makes a decision. Harlem will remain autonomous. He trusts Bumpy's judgment, his intelligence, his ability to maintain peace, not because of fear or force, but because respect has been earned through strategy and demonstrated capability. Schultz is gone on October 23rd. The feared terror ends abruptly, but surprisingly, Harlem doesn't descend into chaos. Operators return to their businesses. Violence stops. Streets regain a cautious calm. And the community, finally, breathes freely. Harlem thrives. Not because of intimidation, not because of power, but because intelligence and respect dictated the outcome. And the credit traces back to 6 minutes at a chessboard in September 1935. Bumpy Johnson and Stephanie St. Clair maintained control. Peacefully, professionally, autonomy secured. Intelligence, not brute force, proved the strongest currency. Luciano's respect for strategy, for capability, had ensured Harlem's freedom. A community, once at the mercy of terror, now controlled its own destiny, and all because a young man from Harlem had played chess, brilliantly, boldly, and without fear. That 6-minute game, and the brilliance, the sacrifice, the strategy, it wasn't just a game, it was a declaration. That respect earned through intelligence could reshape power, could protect a community, could rewrite the rules, and from that day forward, Harlem's independence was no longer a hope, it was a fact, built on foresight, courage, and the mind of Bumpy Johnson. From late 1935 through 1940, Harlem experiences what many would later call a golden age. Independent operators flourish. Bumpy Johnson and Stephanie St. Clair run the city's policy games with precision, professionalism, and the kind of respect that comes from intelligence, not fear. Violence is minimal, revenue grows, communities thrive, and Harlem's streets hum with cautious optimism, knowing their leaders are capable, clever, and respected. During this time, Luciano and Bumpy continue their monthly chess games, sometimes in Harlem, sometimes in Little Italy, occasionally in neutral locations. Each game a mix of competition, friendship, and diplomacy. The games are more than entertainment. They are signals to the underworld that the peace between Italian families and Harlem operators remains strong. That intelligence, not brute force, guides the rules of engagement. That respect can bridge divides no one else dared to cross. But these chess games teach lessons far beyond crime. Intelligence matters more than race. Strategic thinking can maintain peace. And partnerships built on mutual respect are far stronger than relationships enforced through submission or fear. Young operators on both sides watch carefully, learning that capability earns respect, that foresight and planning trump violence, and that even the most powerful cannot ignore the wisdom of the prepared. The legend of the 6-minute game lives on, inspiring generations, reminding everyone that strategy can change lives, communities, and even the balance of power in a city. Beyond the games, Bumpy and Luciano exchange books on strategy and philosophy. Sun Tzu, Machiavelli, lessons in warfare, leadership, and human behavior. Tactical debates arise mid-game, moves on the board, mirrored by discussions of criminal operations. Luciano asks questions, tests ideas, and Bumpy provides insights that are applied in real-world operations. Over time, their respect deepens, their trust strengthens, and friendship grows. A friendship no one expected. Two men from different races, different worlds, defying the division society demanded, united by strategy, intellect, and shared experience. These games, these debates, these strategic sessions weren't just about winning. They were about understanding, about mutual respect, about shaping a city through intellect. By the end of the 1930s, the monthly meetings, the lessons learned, the reputation earned, all of it cements Harlem's independence. A golden age made possible by intelligence recognized, valued, and rewarded by those who understood that the sharpest mind, not the largest muscle, controls the game. The story of the 6-minute game, of Bumpy Johnson outsmarting the most powerful mobster in America, becomes more than legend. It becomes a lesson, a symbol, that intelligence and strategy, respect and foresight, can transform communities, build partnerships, and leave a legacy that lasts decades. The golden age of Harlem independence, the chess games, the friendship, all part of a story that proves brilliance and respect matter. more than power. The game is fierce, each move deliberate, high-level strategy at every turn. Bumpy Johnson narrowly wins. But the victory isn't just on the board. It's in the way both men acknowledge what they've learned. Luciano stands, shaking Bumpy's hand, gratitude and respect in his eyes. "Bumpy," he says, "you've taught me something important. Intelligence exists everywhere, and respecting it makes you stronger, not weaker." Even after Luciano is locked away, the agreements they forged hold. Harlem remains autonomous. Independent operators run policy games professionally. Minimal violence, maximum stability. Bumpy Johnson continues controlling operations until 1952, resumes control after release, and maintains Harlem's freedom until his death in 1968. The legacy endures, the chess games, the lessons, the respect. Visuals, montage of chess sets, Harlem streets, older Bumpy mentoring younger operators. The friendship between Luciano and Bumpy becomes legendary. Stories spread throughout criminal circles and beyond. That famous phrase, "I don't play to lose," transcends the underworld. Quoted in prisons, sports arenas, boardrooms, schools, anywhere people face challenges and need to approach them with preparation, strategy, and unshakable focus. 6 minutes on a chessboard, 9 months of regular games, a lifetime of impact. Visuals, slow pan over chessboard, Harlem streets bustling, community thriving, fading to black and white photos. Intelligence recognized over power, respect earned rather than demanded. That's the power of a chess game that changed Harlem and New York forever. The moves they made, the strategies they shared, didn't just decide a game, they decided the fate of a community. They rewrote the rules of respect and proved that the sharpest mind can outlast the heaviest fist. History usually tells stories from the side of power. But sometimes, history belongs to the people who stood in the street, lied to police, blocked cars, and decided, together, that one of their own was worth protecting. That was Harlem in 1968. And that's why this story still matters.